Hi, Brett here, and in this video we're going to talk about how to switch chords, and we're going to actually show you how to do this on several, well actually on two instruments, on the mountain dulcimer, but then also on the guitar, which is in my opinion one of the harder instruments. But what I show you on the guitar really applies to banjo, mandolin, fiddle, and actually what I show you on the mountain dulcimer applies to them as well, but I wanted to show it on two different instruments. When people make chords, a few of the things that they do is when they put their fingers down, they put them down very, I use the term willy-nilly. In other words, if I said make a D chord on the mountain dulcimer, and this would be a D chord, and I'm sitting at a funny angle here to get this, but that would be your D chord. What they do is sometimes they just actually, and I understand there's needs guidance here, but they use like all kind of different fingerings, you know, that don't really fit. So once you know how to actually make the chord, what you want to do is you want to have a lead finger. In other words, you don't want to start, unless this is what works for you, but you don't want to start here and then here and then here or here, 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 unless that's what's working. You want to be consistent and find a lead finger, and that finger is usually where it feels comfortable, and in the case of the mountain dulcimer, that tends to be the thumb. So if I said make a D chord, the first finger you're going to put down is your thumb on 4. All right, and it doesn't matter if you play mountain dulcimer, guitar, banjo, whatever. That doesn't matter. I'm just explaining it on this instrument because what I'm about to show you will help you make your chords quicker and more efficiently. So number one is you want to have a lead finger. So in this case, it's going to be the thumb. All right, and then you'll drop your middle finger on the middle string at 3, and you're going to put your middle finger on the bass string at 2, and one of the things that helps is to see the shape and the position of your chord. And here we're going straight across, right, just like this. All right, so what I'll tell people is, now I'll say release the chord, and here's what they do. They take their fingers and they completely remove them or bring them way off of the fretboard. And here's the problem with that is, one, then you're starting all over again. 2, the farther you bring your hand off the instrument, the farther you have to take your hand down to the instrument. So let's make the chord again. I'm using my lead finger, which is my thumb. I'm letting the other two fall in place after it. That's the key. All right, if I was doing an A chord, my lead finger in this case would be ring and then my middle. Now eventually they do go down together, but in the process of learning, they don't necessarily do that. So here's our D. If I say release the chord, what I want you to do is just lift up. In other words, here's what it sounds like. If I release it, it sounds like this. What I'm doing is I'm just releasing the pressure off the strings. Push down, release. Push down, release. What you're doing is you're letting your hands get used to that chord position, to feel the shape in your hand. You're teaching your hand how to make the chord, not your eyes how to make the chord. So you push down and you release. After you do that for a little bit, you push down and you take your fingers off. And again, here's what people do. You don't want to do that. And you'd be surprised, I'll say release, and their fingers will go maybe off to the sides. They'll go left or right of the string. So when I say release, what you want to do is just try to hover. My fingers are probably an 1/8 or a 1/16 inch off the strings. Push down, release. Push down, release. Push down, release. Push down, release. And what you're doing is you're teaching your hand how to make that chord rather than your eyes how to make that chord. If you're progressing from one chord to another, and let's do it, this is probably, again in my opinion, going from D to G is going to be the most difficult. You want to figure out what the difference is between the D and G as far as your chord go. And so let's do this. This is a G. So again, what I'm focusing on in this case is my thumb. It's going to go to 5. All right, doesn't matter if you know what a G chord is. What I'm telling you is this is my focus finger. I'm using this finger as my guide, so I slide up. All right, and when you make the G, notice this finger, it just lit up too. I didn't have to take either of these fingers off. Now, you may have to figure this out a few times when you're figuring out the differences of chords, But again, on the mountain dulcimer, this is going to be the only really difficult one, so we're going to cover it. So you're sliding up just like that. And what the difference is this finger's coming off. You're going to drop your ring finger behind it. So what I'm saying is, figure out what you have to do to make the chord. Use your lead finger. And you see that's just the transition is very easy. This comes up, this goes down. So D, G. But again, I'm using, this is my lead finger. If I said, let's go to make an A, my lead finger is going to be the ring finger. It's going to go down first. If I say 4, if I say G or 3, my lead finger is going to be my thumb. This finger is going to follow it. If I say, make the G chord again, the lead finger is the thumb. It's going up, and I'm dropping the fingers behind it. Eventually, it looks like your fingers go down all at once, and they may to a point. But if you really broke it down, probably this finger would go down first, and then the others would follow behind it. So 1, use the lead finger. 2, hover. I've seen so many people, they play like this. Their thumb's down here, and their hands are way down here, which doesn't really make sense because you got to bring them all the way up here. So you want to hover over your chords. If you're going from D to A, this A is already hovered. If I'm going to G from here, notice this finger is still, it's not over the center, but it's hovered. So let's move on to guitar. By the way, if you don't play guitar, please watch this anyhow. If you play mountain dulcimer, please watch the guitar so you understand some of these same principles and how they actually transfer between the two instruments. So let's continue talking about making chords. And I'm going to review what I've said in the other part of the lesson as far as the same ideas and the same techniques, but I need to show you on different instruments. In my opinion, the guitar is the hardest of all stringed instruments to chord on, simply because you have 6 strings and most of them are heavier strings, so it's harder to hold down. Most people are very surprised when they pick up guitar for the first time and try to make a chord, because our hands do not do things in life like they do with a guitar. You could use a typewriter, you could be a car mechanic, you could wash dishes, you could do all kind of things with your hands, but to form them into a shape, different shapes, and hold them is not something that we ever do with our hands. So let's start. I'm going to make a G chord. You don't have to know how to make a G chord. You don't even have to play guitar. This will apply to guitar, banjo, mandolin, fiddle, whatever instrument that is a stringed instrument. So I'm going to make a G chord. And what I want you to notice, let me do it again. It might look like all my fingers are going down at the same time, but they're not. Let me slow it down. I'm putting my pinky down first. By the way, the pinky seems to be everybody's enemy. That's the finger that nobody can control. That's the finger that's usually the weakest. I don't always use my pinky as a lead finger, but in the G chord I do. Okay, so you put the pinky down, and then these are following. Now, they are coming down pretty much together. When you're starting, I've seen people do this. They'll put this finger down, then they'll put this finger down, and they can't get this finger down, so they actually take their finger and they place it where it needs to go and try to hold it there. And that's fine. That's part of the learning process. But once you get the fingers in position, you want to get used to holding that position. So I'll often say to people, after they get to that position, I'll say, so let off the pressure of the chord or release the chord, and they'll do this. All right, which means you've got to start all over again. So when I say release the position, and this is my recommendation, use the lead finger. After you get the chord made, when I say release the position, you're just going to release the pressure. Okay, the strings you're hearing that are strumming are the ones not fretted, but these are the ones that are. They're thunky. Okay, so release the pressure, just release the tension. Okay, and now take your fingers off. And again, here's what most people do. You don't want to do that. When I say release the release the chord, release the tension, take your fingers off, you want to hover. Now, my fingers are probably 1/16 or an 1/8 inch above the strings. Put them back down. And you want to try to put them down now in some kind of unison. Don't try to spider it where you put a finger down at a time. Try to drop those fingers all at the same time. Now, if I made a G chord this way, which is how many people do it. I'm trying to see because I don't make my G chord this way. I'm probably using my ring finger first. In fact, I am. I'm using my ring finger first and putting down the other. So in this case, the lead finger would be the ring finger. The way you figure out what the lead finger is when you make your chords, what finger are you trying to put down first anyhow? What feels most natural and most comfortable? If we're going from a G to a C, what you're going to do is you're going to see what it takes to go from the G to a C. In other words, you don't want to play G and then somebody says C, so you take your fingers off and then you put the C back down. You have to know how to make that chord progression. So here's my G. To go to the C, in this case, I'm just going to really drop these two fingers. That's the first thing I'm going to do. So what I'm saying to do here is don't spider walk the fingers down. If you realize that you're going to drop two, try to lift them together using the pinky as a pivot. Lower them, lift the pinky up, you put the finger down, the pointer finger down. Let me give you one more example. Let's say I'm going to go from G to D, and this is how I make my D. Doesn't even matter. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to use one finger to be your guide. So here's what you're doing. I'm using my middle finger, and to make the D, I realize it has to go to this third string. So instead of just trying to move all my fingers at once, I'm taking this lead finger, this middle finger, I'm dropping it down. That's the lead. And then I'm letting the other fingers fall in place. Let's say I'm going from G to A. What I'm doing is, again, using one finger as a lead. So I hope that makes sense. It's not what is difficult to make chords. It's not difficult to understand the principle. One is you want to have a lead finger. Two, you want to hover and keep your fingers as close as possible. And three, when you move to a different chord, you again want to use that lead finger. All right, so I hope that's helped. We're going to... Here I'm going from a G to an E minor. Okay, if you notice, this finger really doesn't move. So I hope that's helped. What I find people doing when they're making chords is they take 10 times longer to learn the chord because they don't have a plan. All right. In other words, their fingers just go willy-nilly. They try to figure it out. They take their fingers far off the fretboard. You need to stay close. The farther away you are, the farther you have to come back. All right. So hope you enjoyed that. I hope that helps. Practice switching your chords by using a lead finger, by hovering. And when you release the chord and go to another chord, have a plan of what finger is going to lead to go to that next chord. And hope you enjoyed that. And please share this. Please like it. Please comment. And please subscribe. Thanks so much.